My name is Hazel, and my family banned me from Thanksgiving with a single brutal phone call. Don't bother showing up, my mother said. Through the phone, I could hear them all laughing as my cousin joked that I could eat leftovers in the garage. It was the ultimate humiliation. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, and drop a comment where are you watching from. What my family didn't know was that their comfortable house, the groceries for their feast, and the phones they used to mock me were all paid for by me. They thought they were punishing me. They were about to find out they had just fired their personal ATM. It didn't start with a fight. It didn't start with demands or ultimatums. It started with a crisis, the way these things always do. It started with love. I'm a junior financial analyst. It sounds fancier than it is. I work in a cubicle. I stare at spreadsheets and I make a decent, but not spectacular living. The most important thing I have isn't a high salary. It's discipline. I learned early on how to budget, how to save, and how to live below my means. I max out my 401k. I put money into a savings account every month without fail. And I drive a 15-year-old Honda that rattles every time I go over 60. My life is a series of small, careful calculations. My family's life is not. 3 years ago, my dad needed emergency heart surgery. The insurance covered most of it, but there was a hefty out-of-pocket cost that hit them like a freight train. My mom called me crying. My dad, a proud man who never asked for a thing, was quiet on the other end of the line, his silence more painful than any plea. We don't know what we're going to do, Hazel, my mom sobbed. They won't even schedule the procedure without a down payment. I didn't hesitate. I went to my bank, drained the savings account I had been building since my first job, and transferred the money. Every penny. Thank you, my dad had said, his voice thick with emotion. We'll pay you back as soon as we're back on our feet. I believed him. I told them it wasn't a loan, that it was a gift. That's what family does. You show up. You help. That was the first crack in the dam. After that, the water just kept pouring through. A few months later, it was the family phone plan. My brother Marcus had been laid off, and my mom called with a new kind of crisis. They're going to shut off our phones, she said, her voice laced with panic. It's just until Marcus gets a new job. Can you just cover it for a month? We'll pay you back. That phrase became a chorus in my life. Just for this month. We'll pay you back. So I added their 4 lines to my own account. My bill quadrupled overnight, but I told myself it was temporary. It was just to help them through a rough patch. Then came the internet bill. My cousin Ethan, who lived with my parents after dropping out of college, needed it for his online job search. It was easier to just add it to my monthly payments. Then it was the car insurance for the family van. My dad's medical bills were piling up and they couldn't risk a lapse in coverage. I understood. I paid it. The requests became smaller, more casual, but they added up. Hazel, can you spot me 50 for groceries? I'll get you next week. A text from my mom. Hey, can I borrow your credit card for an oil change? I'm a little short. A call from my dad. Hayes, my electricity is about to get cut off. Can you help a brother out? A desperate message from Marcus. Each time I said yes. Each time I typed in my credit card number or sent a Zelle payment, telling myself it was the last time, but it never was. Next month never came. The biggest one, the one that still makes my stomach clench, was the mortgage. About a year in, my mom sat me down at her kitchen table. She had spreadsheets of her own spread out, a jumble of red numbers and past due notices. Your father's pension was cut, she said, not looking at me. We're behind. The bank is sending letters. She didn't have to ask. I knew what she wanted. I looked around the house I grew up in. The photos on the wall, the scuff marks from my childhood games, the worn armchair where my dad always sat. The thought of them losing it was unbearable. So I did the math. I adjusted my budget. I stopped eating out entirely. I canceled my gym membership. I told myself my rattling old Honda could last another few years. I set up an automatic payment from my bank account to theirs. A huge chunk of my salary vanishing on the first of every month before I even had a chance to miss it. This is just until we can get things sorted out, my dad promised. His eyes filled with a shame I now realize was probably just for show, and I let it happen. I lived in a tiny studio apartment across town, a place so small you could cook breakfast from your bed. I ate instant ramen and pasta with ketchup while they posted pictures on social media of the lavish family dinners they were hosting, dinners I was unknowingly funding. I saw photos of my brother with a new gaming console, my cousin Ethan wearing new designer sneakers, my mom showing off a new kitchen appliance. I never questioned it. I never asked where the money I gave them was going, because deep down I think I was scared of the answer. It was easier to believe they were struggling than to accept they were using me. It was easier to be the savior, the responsible one, than to admit I was a fool. I was the family's dirty little secret. the silent partner who funded the entire operation. They got to keep their pride, and I got to keep them in my life. It felt like a fair trade at the time. I just didn't realize how much of myself I was giving away with every dollar. I wasn't just paying their bills, I was paying for their love, and the price kept going up. The family group chat was called Miller Tribe. It was a constant stream of memes from my uncle, blurry photos of my aunt's dog, and announcements from my mom. It was usually background noise in my life, a buzz in my pocket I could ignore. But the week before Thanksgiving, it became the stage for my public execution. A message from my mom popped up. Final head count for Thanksgiving. So excited to see everyone. Let me know if I missed anyone. Beneath it was a list. Mom and Dad, Uncle Jeff and Aunt Carol, Marcus, Ethan, Grandma Miller, everyone. Everyone was listed except for me. My heart did a painful little flip in my chest. It had to be a mistake. A simple oversight. She was busy cooking, planning. She just forgot. I typed out a reply, keeping my tone light and breezy, trying to pretend it didn't sting. Looks great. You missed one, though. I stared at the screen, waiting for the flurry of replies. Oh my gosh, Hazel, so sorry. Can't believe I forgot my own daughter. Of course you're coming. Instead, there was silence. I could see the little icons showing that several people had read my message. Mom, Ethan, Marcus. Still, nothing. The silence stretched for 10 minutes, then 20. It felt louder than any argument. Finally, a new message appeared. It was from my cousin Ethan. Limited seating this year, Hazel? Space is tight. Maybe try for Christmas if you can learn to behave yourself. The words hit me like a slap. Behave myself. I was 29 years old, and my cousin, who I was paying rent for, was telling me to behave. The casual cruelty of it, typed out for the whole family to see, was breathtaking. And still, no one else replied. No one defended me. My own mother, my own brother, my father, all silent. Their silence was an agreement. My fingers trembled as I closed the group chat and called my mom directly. She answered on the second ring, her voice wary. What, Hazel? Mom, what is going on? Why am I not on the list for Thanksgiving? And why is Ethan talking to me like that in front of everyone? Well, maybe if you hadn't been so rude to him, he wouldn't have to. She snapped back, her defensiveness a brick wall. You are not coming, and that's final. Not until you apologize for embarrassing Ethan at his promotion party. The promotion party. It had been 2 months ago. Ethan had gotten some entry-level sales job, and my parents threw a big backyard barbecue to celebrate. He stood in the middle of the lawn, a beer in his hand, bragging loudly about the commissions he was going to be pulling in. Yeah, I closed 3 big accounts this week alone, he announced to a circle of my aunts and uncles. I'll be driving a new BMW by Christmas. You watch. Everyone was oohing and eyeing, patting him on the back. My mom looked at him with tears in her eyes, bursting with pride. I stood on the edge of the circle, listening to him talk about all the money he was making, and I felt a knot of anger tighten in my gut, because just 3 days earlier he had texted me, Hey Hayes, can you send me $200? Rent is due and I'm totally broke. I'll get you back on payday, promise. I had sent it, of course, just like I had the month before that. So, as he was boasting about his future BMW, I asked a simple, quiet question. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I just said, That's amazing, Ethan. Does this mean you'll be able to start paying your own rent now? The circle went dead silent. Ethan's face turned bright red. He stammered, calling me jealous and bitter. My mother pulled me aside into the kitchen, her face a mask of fury. What is wrong with you? She hissed. You have to ruin everything. He was having a moment and you had to tear him down. I just asked a question, I said, my voice shaking. He's borrowing money from me while bragging about buying a luxury car. It's not right. It's none of your business, she shot back. You're just jealous of his success. You need to apologize to him right now. I didn't. I left the party without saying another word. And now, 2 months later, that was my crime. That was the embarrassment I was being punished for. I had spoken the truth in a family that ran on lies. And for that, I was an outcast. Mom, he lied. I said into the phone, my voice pleading. He is still taking money from me. I don't want to hear it, Hazel, she said, her voice hard. You have a choice. Apologize or don't come. It's that simple. The line went dead. I realized then that they didn't care about the truth. They cared about the story where Ethan was a rising star, where they were a happy, successful family. My role in that story was the villain, the bitter, jealous, ungrateful daughter. And the price of admission to their perfect little world was for me to accept that role, to get on my knees and apologize for something I didn't do. My humiliation was their ticket to a happy Thanksgiving. I sat there in my car after that call, the engine off, just staring at the peeling paint on the dashboard of my old Honda. The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot burning weight in my chest. It wasn't just about being uninvited to a dinner. It was the public nature of it. The group chat, the silence from everyone who was supposed to love me. They hadn't just excluded me, they had endorsed the insult. My mind was racing. Part of me, the part that had been conditioned for years to keep the peace, wanted to just do it. To text a fake, hollow apology to Ethan. Hey, sorry about the party. Congrats again. It would be easy. It would smooth things over. I could go to Thanksgiving, sit at the table, and pretend that nothing was wrong. I could swallow the bitterness along with the dry turkey and chalky mashed potatoes. I could survive it. But then what? What would happen at Christmas when I did something else to misbehave? What would happen the next time I dared to speak a truth that made them uncomfortable? I would have to apologize again, and again, and again. I saw my future stretching out before me, a long, bleak road of apologies for crimes I didn't commit, all to maintain my seat at a table where I wasn't even respected. That's when the rage finally broke through the shame. It wasn't a loud screaming rage. It was a cold, quiet fire. It burned away the hurt and the sadness and left something hard and clear in its place. No. I picked up my phone, my hands steady now. I didn't call my mom back to argue. I didn't text the group chat to defend myself. I found the last text exchange I'd had with my mother from 2 days earlier, where she'd sent me a picture of a leaky faucet, and I'd sent back a screenshot confirming I'd booked a plumber and paid for it with my card. I took a deep breath and typed out a single sentence. Fine. I won't be there for Thanksgiving. In that case, you should probably stop using my debit card for the auto pay on your mortgage. It's scheduled to come out tomorrow. I hit send. For a full minute, there was nothing. Then my phone rang. It was her. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. I declined the call. A string of texts started pouring in. Mom, what did you just say? Mom, call me right now, Hazel. Mom, this is not funny. Mom, you wouldn't dare. Then a new wave of messages began, this time from my aunts and uncles. It was like she had deputized them, sending out her flying monkeys to do her bidding. Aunt Carol, Hazel, your mother is very upset. Don't make this about money. Family is more important than money. Uncle Jeff, whatever is going on, you need to fix it. Your parents have done everything for you. Don't be ungrateful. My brother Marcus. Dude, what the hell? Just say sorry to Ethan. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. My entire life was being funneled into keeping their world afloat, and it wasn't a big deal. Family comes first, they said. But they meant their family, their comfort, their needs. I was just the resource that made it all possible. I turned my phone off. Thanksgiving Day arrived, gray and cold. I spent the morning cleaning my tiny apartment, organizing my closet, doing anything to keep my hands busy and my mind quiet. Around 2 in the afternoon, my phone, which I had reluctantly turned back on, buzzed with a new text. It was my mom. The tone was completely different. No anger, no demands. Just a short, bland message. Saved you a plate. You can pick it up from the porch after 6. My heart, against my better judgment, fluttered. A plate. It wasn't an invitation, but it was something. An olive branch, maybe? A small acknowledgement that I was still her daughter. Maybe she felt guilty. Maybe this was her way of apologizing without having to say the words. Hope is a stubborn, stupid thing. At 6:30, when the sky was dark, I got in my car and drove the 20 minutes to their house. I didn't pull into the driveway. I parked across the street, my headlights off. The house was blazing with light and warmth. I could see the silhouettes of my family moving around inside, laughing and talking. I could smell the scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon in the cold night air. And there, on the top step of the porch, was a single styrofoam container. As I watched, a stray cat, one of the skinny neighborhood toms, padded silently onto the porch. It sniffed the air, then crept towards the container. It nudged the lid with its head, then began to lick at a piece of cold, greasy turkey that was sticking out from the side. I put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb. I didn't honk. I didn't cry. I just drove. They hadn't saved me a plate. They had left out their scraps. And even the strays got to it before I did. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't pour myself a drink. I walked to the back of my closet, pushed aside a box of old college sweaters, and pulled out a heavy 3-inch binder. It was plain black with no label on the spine. It didn't need one. I knew exactly what it was. It was my reckoning. I started it about 6 months ago. It began with a nagging feeling, a quiet unease that the numbers just weren't adding up. I'd be checking my bank statement and see a charge I didn't recognize, only to realize it was for a pharmacy near my parents' house. Or I'd get an email receipt for an online order that was being shipped to their address. I started saving them, tucking them into a folder. At first, it was just about keeping track, but soon it became something else. It became an obsession. That night, Thanksgiving night, I sat at my small kitchen table, the binder open in front of me. I didn't feel sad anymore. I didn't feel humiliated. I felt cold, methodical, like an auditor preparing for a final review. I had organized everything with colored tabs. First section was the house. Page after page of banker. Statements showing the automatic mortgage payment, leaving my account on the first of every month for the last 26 months. Highlighted in yellow. Beside it, I had printed out the property tax bills I'd paid online. The utility bills, gas, electric, water, all paid from my credit card. I had even printed screenshots of the texts. Mom, the electric bill is due Friday. Can you handle it? Me. Got it, Dad. Hazel, the city sent a notice about the water bill. We need to take care of it. Me. I'll pay it now. The next section was the cars. The insurance statements for their van and Marcus's sedan, both under my policy. Receipts for oil changes, new tires, and the time I paid for a $600 repair on the transmission. All of it documented. The thickest section was titled Daily Life. It was a chaotic collection of receipts and screenshots. I flipped through the pages and every piece of paper told a story. Here was a grocery bill for $340 from the week before. I remembered my mom calling, saying the fridge was empty and she didn't get paid for another week. I had placed a grocery delivery order for them online. The receipt showed 2 prime rib roasts, a case of expensive craft beer, and 4 tubs of gourmet ice cream. My own fridge held a half-empty carton of eggs and some wilted spinach. Here was a screenshot of a Zelle payment for $200 to Ethan, labeled for rent. Next to it, I had printed a picture from his Instagram, posted 2 days later. He was at a concert with friends, holding up a beer, with the caption, Living the Good Life. Here were 3 years of phone bills, showing the data overages from my brother and the international calls my aunt made to her friend in Spain. Here were the receipts for the plumber, the electrician, the landscaper I had hired to clean up their yard before their barbecue. The very barbecue where I was shamed for speaking the truth. I had every text message where someone begged me for help. Marcus. Hayes. I'm on fumes. Can you send me $40 for gas? I swear I'll pay you back. Aunt Carol. Hazel dear, my prescription copay is higher than I thought. Could you possibly help me out? Ethan. My car broke down. Tow truck is $150. You're a lifesaver. 3 years of my life, distilled down into black ink and faded receipts. 3 years of being their emergency contact. Their lender, their provider, their silent, unacknowledged benefactor. I took a black marker and wrote on the first page of the binder, in big clear letters, "This is what I did for you." Then, I turned to the last page, a blank sheet of paper, and wrote, "And this is what I won't do anymore." Looking at the binder, at the sheer weight of the evidence, I realized I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to have a dramatic, tear-filled confrontation. I didn't need them to understand my pain. The truth wasn't in my feelings. It was in the facts. It was in the numbers. And I had the receipts. Literally, they had built their comfortable lives on a foundation of my sacrifice, and they had the audacity to call me ungrateful. They had banned me from their table while eating the food I had paid for. The sheer hypocrisy of it was staggering. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt powerful. This binder wasn't just a record of my pain. It was a record of my strength. It was proof of how much I could carry. And now, it was my permission slip to finally put it all down. The Friday after Thanksgiving was a study in contrasts. Outside, the world was a screaming frenzy of Black Friday, a consumerist ritual I had only ever observed from a distance, usually because any spare money I had was already earmarked for someone else's emergency. Inside my apartment, there was a profound and deliberate silence. I had unplugged my television. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, not out of fear of their calls. They hadn't started yet, but because I needed absolute focus. This was not a task to be undertaken lightly. It was surgery. I was carefully, methodically, and permanently amputating a part of my life that had become toxic. I sat at my kitchen table, the laptop open, its cool blue light pushing back against the gray morning. Next to it, the reckoning binder lay open. It was my map, my justification, my source of strength. Every time a flicker of guilt tried to ignite within me, I would glance at its pages, at a highlighted receipt for a ridiculously expensive steak dinner they'd had, or a text from Ethan begging for money for a video game, and the flame of doubt would be instantly extinguished. I began with the mortgage. It was the foundation of their life and the pillar of my servitude. Logging into my bank account, my hands were surprisingly steady. My heart wasn't racing. It was beating with a slow, heavy percussive rhythm, like a drum before a battle. I navigated to the bill pay center, the automated payments I had set up with such a heavy heart years ago. There it was, payment to Miller Family Mortgage Account, a number so large it had reshaped my entire existence. It was the reason I lived in this small studio, the reason my car was a decade old, the reason my savings account was a joke. I moved the cursor over the delete button, and I hesitated. For one single, agonizing moment, a montage of memories flooded my mind. My dad teaching me to ride a bike in the backyard of that house. My mom making soup for me in that kitchen when I was sick. Christmas mornings in that living room. The house wasn't just a building, it was the repository of my entire childhood. A voice, the one I had been trained my whole life to obey, whispered in my ear, "You can't do this. They will be homeless. It will be your fault." I squeezed my eyes shut. My fault. I opened them and forced myself to look at the binder again. I flipped to a page in the back. It was a printout of my own projected retirement savings. The graph was pathetic. A flat line instead of a rising curve, because I could never contribute enough. Next to it, I had placed a photo my mom had posted on social media a few months back. A brand new, top-of-the-line stainless steel refrigerator. Our old one just gave out. So excited for this upgrade. She had captioned it. I remembered that week. I had paid their water bill, their car insurance, and had given Marcus $100 for job interview clothes. They weren't struggling. They were upgrading. On my dime, the guilt evaporated, replaced by the cold, clear light of certainty. This wasn't about love. This was a transaction, and I was closing my account. I clicked the button. A small box appeared. "Are you sure you want to cancel this scheduled payment?" My finger didn't waver. I clicked confirm. The line item vanished. Just like that, 26 months of shouldering their largest financial burden was over. A breath I didn't know I was holding escaped my lungs in a long, shuddering sigh. It felt less like an act of destruction and more like an act of creation, the creation of my own future. Next were the utilities. This was a more tedious process, a journey through a half-dozen poorly designed websites, each requiring a password I had to reset. The gas company, the electric company, the city water department. One by one, I went into the payment settings and meticulously deleted my credit card information. On the city's portal, the system wouldn't allow me to leave the payment field blank. It was a tiny, frustrating obstacle designed to keep the money flowing. Fine. I opened my wallet and pulled out a credit card that had expired 2 years ago. I carefully typed in the old number, the old expiration date. The system accepted it without a second thought. The next payment would bounce, and the problem, for the first time, would be theirs to solve, not mine. The internet and cable bill required a phone call. I dreaded it, knowing I would have to navigate a maze of automated menus and aggressive retention specialists. I put the phone on speaker and began to clean my kitchen as I waited. After 15 minutes of hold music, a cheerful voice answered. "Thank you for calling Omnicable. My name is David. How can I help you?" "Hello, David," I said, my voice even. "I'd like to cancel the service at 124 Oak Street." The sales pitch began immediately. He offered me discounts, premium channels, a higher internet speed. With each offer, I gave the same polite, firm refusal. "No, thank you. I'm not interested in a new offer. I just want to cancel the service." "May I ask the reason for the cancellation, ma'am?" he asked, his tone shifting slightly. "Are you dissatisfied with the service?" "No, the service is fine," I said. "I'm just no longer willing to pay for it." There was a moment of confused silence on his end. People didn't say that. They invented reasons. Moving, switching providers, dissatisfaction. My blunt honesty seemed to short-circuit his script. "See," he said. "Okay, ma'am. The service will be terminated at the end of the current billing cycle, which concludes this coming Monday." The final and most symbolic act was the phone plan. This was the digital umbilical cord that connected us. I was paying for 5 lines, 5 streams of unlimited data, talk and text that they used without a second thought. I called the provider and spoke to a woman who guided me through the process of what she called splitting responsibility. "So, to be clear," she said, "you will maintain your line, and your account will be converted to a single line plan. The other 4 numbers will be moved to separate individual prepaid accounts. Is that correct?" "That's correct," I said. "They will each remain active," she continued, "but they will have a zero balance. To continue service, to make calls, send texts, or use mobile data, they will need to create their own online accounts and add funds. And will they be notified of this change?" I asked, picturing the chaos this would unleash. "Yes, ma'am. As soon as I process this, they will each receive a series of automated text messages explaining the change in their account status and providing a link to set up their own payment method." It was beautiful. It was clean. It wasn't me yelling or explaining. It was a corporation, in cold, impersonal terms, informing them that the free ride was over. I gave her the go-ahead. For the rest of the weekend, a strange and unfamiliar peace settled over me. On Saturday, I took my newly repaired car, running silently and smoothly for the first time in years, and drove to the coast. It was something I had always wanted to do, but it was a 2-hour drive, and I could never justify the cost of gas. I bought myself fish and chips and sat on a cold, windy beach, watching the waves crash against the shore. I didn't check my phone once. I didn't think about them. I just thought about the ocean and the sky and the feeling of the salty air on my face. On Sunday, I went to a bookstore and bought 3 new novels, a luxury I hadn't allowed myself in ages. I spent the afternoon reading, a cup of tea by my side. The silence in my apartment was a warm, comforting blanket. There were no panicked calls, no sudden demands, no manufactured crises. They were still living in the bliss of the old world, unaware that their universe was scheduled to shrink dramatically at 9 a.m. the next morning. Monday came. I sat at my desk at work, a knot of nervous energy in my stomach. I was a spectator waiting for a show to begin. At 9:15 a.m., the curtain rose. The first call came from my dad. The name flashed on my screen. My thumb hovered over the answer button, a reflex born of years of conditioning. I pulled it back and pressed silence. A moment later, the text began. They came in a flood, a digital torrent of confusion, panic, and rage. Dad, the bank just called. The mortgage payment was declined. They said the auto pay was canceled. Did you change your bank account? Call me, Mom. Hazel, this is not a joke. The bank is threatening late fees. I tried to pay the electric bill online and it said the card was declined. Fix this now, Marcus. WTF? My data isn't working. It says I have a zero balance. Did you forget to pay the bill? I'm in the middle of something. And then, the pièce de résistance from Ethan, a masterpiece of concise fury. Ethan, my phone is shut off, you bitch. What did you do? I read the messages one by one. I pictured the scene at their house, the frantic calls between them, the dawning realization that this wasn't an accident, that all their lifelines had been cut simultaneously. They weren't just separate problems anymore. They were a coordinated event, an act of rebellion. I took a slow sip of my coffee. It was hot and strong and tasted like victory. For my entire adult life, I had been the family's first responder, the person they called to put out their fires. But the fires were of their own making, lit by their own irresponsibility. I hadn't abandoned them. I had simply stopped being their fire department. I had let the consequences of their actions finally, for the first time, fall on them. And I felt no guilt. Only a quiet, resolute, and long overdue sense of peace. For 2 days, my phone was a war zone. They tried every tactic in their arsenal. My mother left a series of voicemails that swung wildly between tearful pleading and venomous accusations. How could you do this to your father, with his heart condition? The stress is going to kill him, and it will be your fault, she wailed in one message, only to follow it up with another that hissed. You will get nothing from us when we're gone. Nothing. You have made your bed. Hazel. My father's approach was one of disappointed silence, punctuated by terse, commanding texts. We need to talk. This has gone far enough. It was a full-scale emotional assault, designed to breach my defenses and trigger my deeply ingrained sense of guilt. But something inside me had fundamentally changed. Their words, which once would have shattered me, now felt like pebbles thrown against a brick wall. The reckoning binder sat on my passenger seat as I drove to and from work, a silent, heavy reminder of the truth. Their version of reality no longer had any power over me. On Wednesday evening, their strategy shifted. My father sent a text that was different from the others. It wasn't a command but an ultimatum. Dad. Hazel, please. We are coming over to your apartment tomorrow night at 7. We have to sort this out. We will not leave until we do. The audacity of it was breathtaking. They intended to invade my space, to corner me in my own home and force a surrender. The old me would have been terrified. She would have spent the next 24 hours scrubbing her small apartment, rehearsing her excuses, preparing to be broken down. But the new me saw the move for what it was, a desperate gambit from a position of weakness, and I knew exactly how to counter it. I replied in under a minute. Me. No, you will not be coming here. My home is off limits. If you want a conversation, it will be on my terms. Meet me at your house. Tomorrow at 7. I have things to show you. The power dynamic shifted instantly. I wasn't being summoned. I was granting an audience. By choosing their house, the scene of the crime, the very place I had been banned from just a week prior, I was turning the tables completely. I would walk into their territory not as a penitent daughter, but as an auditor, ready to present my findings. The next evening, I prepared for the meeting with a calm, deliberate focus. I put on a simple black blazer over a plain shirt, my work clothes. It felt like armor. I didn't bother with makeup. This was business. Finally, I picked up the binder. It felt heavier than usual, weighted with the years of silent sacrifice it contained. I walked out of my apartment and got in my car, my resolve as cool and hard as the leather of the steering wheel. I pulled up to their house at precisely 7 o'clock. The porch light was on, casting a lonely yellow glow. My dad opened the door before I even stepped out of the car. His face was a roadmap of stress and sleepless nights. He looked older than he had a week ago. "Hazel," he said, his voice raspy. "Thank you for coming." I nodded once and walked past him into the house. My mom was at the kitchen table exactly as I had pictured. She was twisting a napkin in her hands, her knuckles white. She didn't look at me, but I could feel the waves of resentment rolling off her. The house felt different, colder, darker. The cheerful energy I remembered was gone, replaced by a thick, anxious silence. "You wanted to talk," I said, breaking the quiet. I walked to the head of the table and placed the binder down. The sound it made, a solid, authoritative thud, echoed in the room. "So let's talk." My dad sat down heavily. "Your mother and we don't understand," he began, his voice weak. "The mortgage, the utilities. We thought things were tight, but we didn't think." "You didn't think because you didn't ask," I said, my voice steady and devoid of emotion. I opened the binder to the first tab, labeled The House, and spun it around to face them. The pages were filled with my bank statements, with the mortgage payments highlighted in a fluorescent, accusatory yellow. "Let me be clear so there is no more misunderstanding," I said, my finger tracing the line of the first payment from 26 months ago. "This is the payment that has left my account on the first of every month. Here is the annual property tax bill, paid from my savings account. And here," I turned the page, "are the itemized utility bills, gas, electric, water, all on autopay from my credit card." My mom let out a small, choked sound. "But, Ethan," she stammered, finally looking at me, her eyes pleading. "Ethan told us he was helping out. He said he was giving us money every month to contribute." "Ethan has never contributed a single cent to this household," I stated, my voice flat. I flipped to a new section, the one titled with his name. It was filled with screenshots of our text exchanges. "In fact, Ethan has been a net drain on my finances. This is a Zelle payment for his rent, which he claimed he was short on. And this is for his car repairs. And this is for his concert tickets." My father stared at the pages, his face ashen. He looked utterly defeated. "We didn't know, Hazel. I swear to God we didn't know the extent of it." Just as he said that, the side door banged open and Ethan himself swaggered in. He had the same arrogant look on his face he'd had at his promotion party, a belligerent confidence that set my teeth on edge. "I'm here," he announced, as if he were the main event. "What's this all about? You finally come to your senses, Hazel. Ready to apologize and turn the money back on?" He directed his smug grin at me, but I didn't even look at him. I kept my eyes on my parents. His timing couldn't have been more perfect. "Ethan," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "My parents seem to be under the impression that you were contributing financially to this household, that you were helping them pay for the very mortgage that is now in default." Ethan scoffed, crossing his arms. "Yeah, so? I help out where I can. What's it to you?" "Is that so?" I slid the binder across the table until it was directly in front of him. It was open to the page displaying his own desperate, pleading text messages in bright yellow highlight. "Hayes, I'm totally broke. Can you spot me $200? Promise I'll get you back." He froze. His smug expression dissolved, replaced by a sudden stark panic. His eyes darted back and forth across the page, seeing his own lies immortalized in print. He looked up at his aunt and uncle, my parents, who were now staring at him with a mixture of confusion and dawning betrayal. The color drained from his face. He was a cornered animal, and he knew it. He tried to bluster his way out. "What is this? You think you can twist my words," he stammered, pointing a shaking finger at the pages. "Those are your words, Ethan," I said calmly. "And here are the corresponding payments leaving my account." "There is no twist." My mother looked at him, her voice a wounded whisper. You told us you were paying rent here." I was going to," he shot back, his voice cracking. "I just needed some help to get on my feet." I finally stood up, the legs of my chair making a sharp, grating sound on the floor. The sound of finality. I looked at the three of them, my shell-shocked parents, my exposed cousin. The whole rotten, dysfunctional system was laid bare on the kitchen table between us. "You built a life on my back," I said, my voice resonating with the cold weight of years of resentment. "You praised him for his lies while you condemned me for my silence. You called it a family. You called it helping each other out." I pointed one last time at the binder, at the undeniable proof of their exploitation. "I call it theft." I picked up my purse, leaving the binder on the table. It was their problem now. I turned, walked out the door into the cool night air, and for the first time, felt the satisfying click of a lock turning behind me. The door to my past was finally and irrevocably closed. The days following the kitchen table confrontation were a revelation. I had expected a mushroom cloud of rage, another volley of angry texts and voicemails. Instead, there was an eerie, unsettling silence. The binder, which I had left behind as my final closing statement, had apparently done its work. It had detonated in the middle of their cozy, lie-filled world and left them speechless in the blast zone. This new quiet was different from the silence of my weekend of pulling plugs. That had been the quiet of preparation. This was the quiet of a stunned aftermath. I knew it was temporary. A system built on such deep-rooted dependency doesn't just heal itself overnight. It thrashes. It goes through withdrawal. And I knew sooner or later the symptoms would begin to show. The first tremor came a week later, not from my parents, but from Aunt Carol. She was my mother's sister, the family gossip, and a master of passive-aggressive guilt. She called me on a Tuesday morning while I was at work. "Hazel, dear," she began, her voice dripping with syrupy, false concern. "I spoke with your mother last night. She sounds just awful. I'm so worried about her. And your father? Well, the stress can't be good for his heart." "I see," I said, my voice a flat line. I refused to take the bait. She told me about this. "Misunderstanding about money," she continued delicately. "Honey, I know you've been generous, but family is more important than money. You can't just abandon them. You're all they have." This, from a woman who had once borrowed $500 from me for a dental emergency and then immediately posted pictures from a weekend spa retreat. The memory, once a source of bitter resentment, was now just a useful piece of data. "Aunt Carol," I said, my tone polite but firm, "I appreciate your concern for my parents, but my relationship with them, financial or otherwise, is no longer open for family discussion. I have made my decision." "But Hazel," she insisted, her voice losing some of its sweetness. "Blood is thicker than water. You have a responsibility. Did you ever pay me back the $500 you borrowed for your dental emergency?" I asked, the question dropping into the conversation like a block of ice. There was a sputtering sound on the other end of the line. "Well, things were tight." "I know they were," I said. "Things were tight for me too, because I was paying your sister's mortgage." "Goodbye, Aunt Carol." I hung up the phone before she could form another syllable. The satisfaction was immense. I had not only enforced a boundary for myself, but had also held one of my peripheral tormentors accountable. The next call came from Marcus. It was late at night and he sounded genuinely lost. The anger was gone, replaced by a pathetic sort of confusion. "Hayes," he started, "I got a letter from the car insurance company. It says my policy is canceled for non-payment." I thought it was on autopay. "It was, Marcus," I explained, as if to a child. "It was on autopay from my credit card. I took it off. You have to get your own policy now." "But how do I do that?" he asked, and the helplessness in his voice was profound. "They ask all these questions about deductibles and liability. I don't know any of that stuff. You always just handled it." For a moment, I felt a pang of something that resembled pity. I had been their crutch for so long that they had forgotten how to walk. It would have been so easy to sigh and say, "Okay, go to this website, choose these options. I'll walk you through it." The pull of my old role, the fixer, the capable one, was strong, but I knew that helping him now would be a betrayal of everything I was fighting for. It would be like a doctor prescribing a patient just one more dose of the poison they were trying to quit. "It's called being an adult, Marcus," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "You have to learn. Google it. Call the insurance company and ask them to explain it. You are a capable person. You can figure it out." "But what if I do it wrong?" he whined. "Then you'll learn from your mistake and fix it," I said. "That's also part of being an adult. I have to go now." I ended the call, my heart heavy but my resolve intact. This was the tough love I had never been allowed to show, and they had never been forced to receive. The main event, the call I had been bracing for, came from my mother a few days later. She had clearly been rehearsing. Her voice was calm, measured, and dangerously reasonable. "Hazel," she said, "your father and I have been talking. We looked through the binder, and we realized we made some mistakes. We allowed ourselves to become too dependent on you, and that wasn't fair." I stayed silent. This was a new tactic. Acknowledgement. Admission of fault. It was a trap. "We are trying to fix things," she continued. "Your father is looking for some part-time work. We've told Ethan he has 60 days to either start paying us market rate rent or move out. We are making changes. But Hazel, we can't fix this overnight. The bank won't even talk to us unless we can make a good faith payment, and we don't have it. We are asking you, not as a provider, but as a daughter, for one last loan, just to stop the foreclosure. We will sign a contract. We will pay you back with interest. Please, Hazel, don't let us lose our home." She had almost found the right words. Loan, contract, interest. She was trying to speak my language, but I knew it was a lie. It would be a loan that was never repaid, a contract that would never be enforced. It was just one last desperate attempt to hook me back in. "No, Mom," I said, and the word came out easily without hesitation. "No?" Her voice broke. the calm facade crumbling. Just no? After I just admitted we were wrong? After I told you all the things we're doing to change? The changes you're making are what you should have been doing all along, I said. Those are the normal actions of responsible adults. You don't get a reward for that, and you don't get another loan from me. My bank is closed. Permanently. The inevitable explosion came. You are a cold, heartless girl, she screamed into the phone. You would see your own parents on the street out of spite. You will regret this when you have no one. You will die alone. It was the same threat Ethan had used. Loneliness. Their ultimate weapon. My peace is more valuable than your approval, Mom, I said quietly. And I will not set myself on fire to keep you warm anymore. Goodbye. I hung up, and I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that this time it was truly the end. The fallout had rained down, and I was still standing. The collapse had begun, but it wasn't my collapse. It was theirs. January in my city is usually a bleak, gray affair. The holiday lights come down, the weather turns bitter, and a sense of anticlimax hangs in the air. But for me, that January was the most vibrant and colorful month of my life. It was the month of the great healing silence. The barrage of calls and texts had ceased completely after that final, explosive conversation with my mother. It seemed they had finally understood. The door was closed, locked, and barricaded. The silence they left behind was vast and all-encompassing. At first it felt strange, like the phantom limb sensation of an amputee. I would find myself checking my phone for messages that weren't there, bracing for a call that never came. My body and mind were still conditioned to live in a state of high alert, constantly anticipating the next crisis, the next demand. But after a week or two, the phantom limb stopped aching. The silence was no longer an absence. It became a presence. It was a luxurious, peaceful space that was entirely my own. I began to discover what my life could be like when it wasn't being consumed by the needs of others. The most tangible change was the money. When my first full paycheck of the new year came in, I stared at my bank account in disbelief. The number was so much larger than I was used to seeing. After my own rent, my own bills, and my own savings contributions were accounted for, there was still a surplus, a significant one. For years, every dollar had been spoken for before it even arrived. Now, I had discretionary income. I had options. My first act of liberation was small, but deeply meaningful. I went to a nice department store, walked straight to the bedding section, and bought the most expensive, comfortable set of high thread count sheets I could find, along with a plush new duvet and pillows. That night, sinking into my bed felt like being embraced by a cloud. It was a physical manifestation of the comfort and security I was finally allowing myself. I had spent years funding their comfort. Now it was my turn. With this newfound freedom, I started investing in myself in other ways. I signed up for a financial planning seminar. I sat in a room full of strangers, learning about mutual funds and long-term growth strategies. For the first time, I was planning a future that revolved around my own goals. Buying a condo, traveling, retiring someday, not just surviving until their next emergency. It was exhilarating. I felt like I was waking up from a long, troubled sleep. I reconnected with old friends I had let drift away. I had always been the one to cancel plans at the last minute because of a family drama, or because I simply couldn't afford a $10 movie ticket. Now, I was the one initiating contact. Hey, I texted a friend from college I hadn't seen in 2 years. Long time no see. Are you free for dinner this week? My treat. We met at a Thai restaurant, and as we talked, I realized how much of myself I had lost. I had forgotten how to just talk to a friend, how to laugh about silly things, how to listen to someone else's problems without immediately trying to solve them with my wallet. I told her a carefully edited version of my family situation. She just listened, then reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm so glad you're free, Hazel, she said, and I knew she didn't just mean free for dinner. The silence from my family was occasionally punctuated by faint echoes from their world, seen through the distorted lens of social media. Ethan predictably was the most active. His posts became a bizarre mix of inspirational quotes about resilience and passive-aggressive digs. One day he posted a picture with the caption, "The strongest people are the ones who can forgive." Another day it was, "Sometimes you have to let go of the people who are holding you down, even if they're family." The complete lack of self-awareness was astounding. It was like watching a bad actor perform a one-man play about being the victim. It no longer sparked anger in me, only a distant clinical pity. The biggest test came in mid-February. It was my birthday. In previous years, my mother would call first thing in the morning to sing to me, and there would be a mandatory family dinner that night. This year, my phone was silent. The day passed without a single call or text from any of them. Not from my parents, my brother, my aunts, or my uncles. They had not just cut me off financially. They had erased me from the family calendar. The old me would have been devastated. She would have spent the day crying, her loneliness a raw, open wound. But as I sat in my quiet apartment that evening, a slice of cake I had bought for myself on the plate in front of me, I didn't feel lonely. I felt calm. The obligation was gone. The forced celebration, the fake smiles, the underlying tension. I was free from all of it. My friends from work had taken me out for lunch, and their genuine affection felt more real than any of the hollow family traditions I had lost. Later that week, a birthday card arrived in the mail. It was from my grandmother. Inside, her shaky handwriting filled the small card. "Dearest Hazel," it read, "thinking of you on your birthday. I hope you are well. I know things are difficult right now. Your mother has a good heart, but her pride gets in the way. I hope one day you can all find your way back to each other. With love, Grandma." Tucked inside was a crisp $20 bill. I held the card in my hands, and for the first time since Thanksgiving, I cried. They were not tears of sadness or anger, but tears of a complex, bittersweet grief. It was a mourning for the family I wished I had, the family my grandmother still believed we could be. The $20 bill was a symbol of a different kind of love, a simple, unconditional gesture with no strings attached. It was everything I had ever wanted from them. I didn't reach out. I didn't break the silence. I knew that one person's hope couldn't mend a foundation that was rotten to its core. I put the card and the money in a special box. It was a reminder that I wasn't entirely alone, but also a reminder that the path I was on, the path of quiet, self-sufficient peace, was the right one. The silence wasn't a punishment anymore. It was my sanctuary. The seasons changed. Winter's harsh gray gave way to the tentative green of spring, which blossomed into the full-throated warmth of summer. With each passing month, the life I was building for myself became more real, and the life I had left behind felt more like a story I had read about someone else. I got a promotion at work. The extra money, combined with what I was already saving, allowed me to finally move out of my tiny studio. I found a one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood with a small balcony. The first time I sat out there with my morning coffee, looking out at the trees instead of a brick wall, I felt a sense of accomplishment so profound it almost brought me to tears. This was mine. I had earned this peace, this view, this small patch of sunlight. I never heard the full story of what happened with the house. My grandmother, in her occasional carefully neutral cards, would drop small hints. They had taken out a high-interest loan to stop the foreclosure. My father was working nights as a security guard. Ethan had moved out, though no one knew where. They were surviving. They hadn't ended up on the street, as my mother's dramatic prophecies had foretold. They were just living with the consequences of their choices, like everyone else. Looking back, the cruelty of that Thanksgiving phone call was the greatest gift they ever gave me. It was the catalyst, the violent shove I needed to jump off a sinking ship. They thought they were taking away my family, but what they really took away was my burden. They thought they were punishing me with exile, but they were granting me my freedom. They banned me from Thanksgiving. In return, I banned them from my wallet. And in that strange, painful reversal, I discovered a fundamental truth. I wasn't the beggar at their feast. They were the beggars at mine. I had spent years pleading for their respect, for their appreciation, for a simple acknowledgement of my worth beyond my bank account. And when I stopped paying for my seat at the table, the entire illusion collapsed. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say to a family that takes and takes is no, not a no that is yelled in anger, but one that is spoken in the quiet, unshakable voice of self-worth. It is a no that is a boundary, not a weapon. It is a no that is about choosing your own peace over their chaos, your own future over their past. And sometimes that simple word, that quiet refusal, is the beginning of everything. If you've ever been treated like the family ATM, if you've ever felt like your love was valued less than your money, hit like, subscribe, and share your story in the comments below. You're not alone. Remember this, boundaries aren't cruelty, they're love with a spine.